Happy New Year's, everyone. My name is Micah, and this is my first YouTube video this year. And I thought to kick things off, I would do a little year in review. I posted a little portion of this writing on my Substack, and I originally started writing this essay because I wanted to post it to Substack. But then, as I was writing about everything that I learned in 2025, literally a day ago, um, I just kind of like was like, and I was writing so much that I was like, this would do better as like a long form content. Like, this is kind of just like a script. So with that, here are the four main lessons of 2025 that I am walking into 2026 with. Here for your listening, entertainment, and thought provoking. This is number one, attractive diligence. In previous years, I've made vision boards, made manifestation scripts, and planned this overarching idealization for the upcoming year. This time last year, I confidently decided I didn't need to make a vision board for whatever reason. I think it had to do with like everything that I wanted in 2024 magically appeared in my life. So at the end of that year, my life was kind of really put together. I was going to the gym, going to church, I was in a relationship, everything was going great. And despite this perfect life I was living, I did, however, still decide to coin a term for the year, as I have done every year since 2021. 2021 is when I first started making vision boards and also, I guess, proclaiming a title of the year. Um, I wanted a phrase this last year in 2025 that, on one hand, gave me the empowerment to continue making choices that are beneficial to my life, and on the other hand, allowed for the magical realm of manifestation to play its own part in my life. In 2025, I decided this was my phrase: I am going to diligently attract miraculous moments into my life. And I figured that was kind of separated into two different portions of this phrase. There was the diligent part and then the attraction part. The diligent part was every action that I was in control of. So, like the going to church and going to the gym and that kind of thing. And then, in turn, the attraction part would just kind of happen, is kind of what I assumed. And that would manifest itself through what I called miraculous moments. And I spent a lot of the last week of 2025 reflecting on what actually happened and the miraculous moments that actually took place. Because I think I know I have a tendency to like personally over romanticize the entire year as a whole. And yes, it was a great year, and I'm very grateful for that. But actually taking the time to reflect on the things that have happened and the things that impacted who I was interesting to do this year, or the last week of the year. Um, and as I was reflecting, I realized that it took so much effort to carry over the perfect life of 2024 into 2025 that I didn't even realize there were cracks in what I was bringing over. Uh, you know, avoidance and just like miscommunications and lack of communication and just so many little tiny details, um that I collectively perceived as perfect, that I was bringing into 2025. And during the middle of the year, I found myself holding all of the pieces of perfection, and I realized that it was shattered and broken, and I had no idea why I was gripping them so tightly. And I really sat with myself and thought, like, was this what I wanted to attract into my life? No. It was a shattered reality that really hurt my heart to look at a whole. And when making my phrase, I don't think I understood the word diligent and attraction um the way that I understood them now. Because I assumed that diligence was every correct action that I made in my life. And everything that I wanted to attract was already right in front of me. the community, the relationships, everything. So if I just kept the same routine, the actions, then things would stay the same, right? In hindsight, it was this mentality that shifted my perspective. If I could devote my entire life to being diligent in hopes to attract the life I want, that could work. And I mean, for a little bit, it did. Things were going really good at the beginning of 2025. But as I started to face more and more difficult situations, it made me question my diligence and in turn made me question my faith in myself because I started to ask myself, like, I didn't know whether or not something was meant for me or if it was just what I had. I didn't know whether something was a sign of if it should stay or leave my life. And I didn't know anything anymore. And the routines that I had built were drastically changing. And I started to feel overwhelmingly this sense of dread. And I had never felt more alone in my life during the middle of 2025. And it was interesting to go through that because it was a return of everything that like I hadn't thought since I was 16. So it was like really, really crazy. And I kept on asking myself, like, how was I supposed to be diligent when life didn't feel worth it anymore? How was I going to attract my dream life if I had it and now it's gone? And looking back on the challenges at the end of the year, I understand a different perspective. They weren't challenges I was facing, and I like to think that they were more the miraculous moments that I claimed at the beginning of the year. Because turns out I have no say if what I've attracted into my life stays. And being diligent isn't only about my actions, is what I've found. It's also about knowing when you have to take the right action, even though you don't want to. It's about knowing when to pull the plug, and attracting the life you want isn't always going to make it appear. It's more so about making the space for it too. It's not, you're constantly pulling. Sometimes you need to push other things away to make the space for it. And so, as I've attempted to try to answer the question, was I diligent in attracting those miraculous moments? I think I can say yes. Like, I can proudly say yes. Um, it wasn't about how my diligence was attracting me in my dream life. It was more so about how those miraculous and difficult moments that I went through this year helped me foster what I call now an attractive diligence. It was never the fact that if I was diligent, I could be diligent enough that I'd automatically be living the life of my dreams, but it's that every action I took, despite how hard they were, was diligent. And I knew why I was doing them. It's not just because I thought that that's what would attract my dream life. I knew why I was making those choices. And that's what cleared the space for my actual dreams to come true. Because, I think I spent a lot of my time trying to figure out how to put together the life that I was living into being like, this is my dream life because I attracted this. But I don't think that I was able to see things for what they were, because a lot of the time they weren't what I was looking for, or they weren't what I wanted to feel like. So in the end, I learned that I had to let go and I had to pull the plug because I know myself best and I know what I want to feel. And those situations that I was in, they didn't make me feel the greatest. So, yeah, that was lesson number 1. And lesson number 2 is a metaphor. And I tend to write a lot. This is the one that I posted on my Substack. So if you already read that, my bad. Hopefully you enjoy hearing me read it and you'll understand more of the nuance behind this piece of writing. But this first part is a little bit of an exercise, and if you're watching and you want to try this along, feel free. I invite you to. This is called the fruit bowl metaphor. I want you to imagine that you have a magnificent bowl that is filled with fruit. It is your pride and joy. The bowl is made of dark mahogany wood. You crafted it several years ago, and this masterpiece sits at the center of your kitchen table. Your friends admire it, your family loves it, and every week or so you go out to buy fruit to replenish your fruit bowl. One day while out grocery shopping, you decide to buy this exotic fruit that you've never tried before. This piece of fruit is brightly colored to your favorite color and shiny, and it smells delightful. It reminds you of a fond memory you have with someone very close in your life, so you purchase this exotic fruit with an assortment of your regulars: bananas, apples, mandarins, and you head back home. In your fruit bowl, you begin to decorate it with all your regular fruits, and on top of this beautiful pile of your favorite fruits, you set the brightly colored exotic fruit. You think it was almost too pretty to eat. Days pass, and your friends you have over swoon at the luxury of your fruit bowl. Your family compliments how it brightens up the room, and as the week passes, you've eaten all the other fruits, leaving that one behind, so you decide to try it. And it was sour and mushy. It contained flavors you think a fruit should never taste like. It definitely wasn't something you'd ever eat again, but now that you know that, you can just decide that you won't get it again. Now you're at the grocery store. You haven't been able to get that taste out of your mouth, so you're looking forward to the chance to go back to your regular fruit display. But as you're walking down the aisles, you think about the response this exotic fruit has brought you. So you decide to get another, replacing one of your typical choices. It's okay, I just won't eat it this time. This cycle continues for about another few months. Soon enough, your entire fruit bowl is filled with a vibrant array of these toxic fruits, of exotic of these exotic fruits. Though you never dare eat though you never dare to eat them, you brought them anyway. To impress your friends, maybe to impress your family. You hold on to these fruits, and after a week or so, with no one visiting you in your home, your stomach growls. You walk into your kitchen, desperate to eat anything. Your feet heavy as they drag on the cold tile. You reach into your fruit bowl, only to find that all of the exotic fruit have now rotted away. The mush they've left has stained and stuck to your fingers, and the smell of rotten fruit emanates from your bowl. So you toss them out, leaving your bowl empty. That's the metaphor, okay? Walk with me here. Walk with me here, people. Of course, I've had my fair share of difficult decisions to make this year, but there were some decisions that I made that at the time I wasn't quite sure why I made them, kind of jumping off my attractive diligence point. I didn't know why I was making them, but when I came up with this metaphor, it brought a clarity to me that helped me understand in a visual and almost primal way of why I acted the way that I did. And it's honestly a really helpful metaphor for me on how to react in the future of this year, of 2026. Looking back on 2025, it kind of felt like an experiment for me. I had all of these metaphorical fruits in my life, and throughout this year, I noticed how afraid I was of eating some of the fruits in my bowl. Or, in other words, I was afraid of losing the fruit, either because I didn't want to ruin the fruit because it was too pretty, or I knew that I wouldn't like the taste because I've tried it before, or I didn't want to leave my bowl empty. Even when they were rotted, I still found myself wanting to let them exist in my fruit bowl. Because I guess at one point I thought they looked good in it, so I was so afraid I had let them rot to the point I had to remove them. So it's interesting to me that in some of the situations this year, I let my perfection get in the way of having something in my life that was actually fulfilling. Even when some of the fruits I've been fond of slowly started to lose their flavor, I still kept buying them. They kept their space in my fruit bowl. Despite me wanting to expand my palate and experience different fruits, I didn't have the space to. That was until I knew the fruit had gone too far. I knew I wasn't going to eat it, or I knew that I didn't like the taste. And so, with courage, I ended up throwing the fruit away. And that's when I discovered there are three things you can do with the fruit in your fruit bowl. You can let the fruit rot, you can eat the fruit, or you throw the fruit away. Letting the fruit rot is what I think most people do in their lives, right? It's a passive way of living, and you don't actively choose the fruit you're buying. You're just kind of buying whatever is healthy at the time. You don't necessarily care too much about the flavor of the fruit. You just get it to have it. And you're like, oh, I'm going to be healthy. And oh, I'll eat it sometime, I'm sure. And that's where I think people get tripped up, because getting something to have something lends to a fear of losing that thing. At some point, you didn't have it, and now you do, so that means you could not have it again. It instills fear and loss, and who really wants to feel like that? So we tend to cling to these situations, these fruits that aren't benefiting us, and we hold on to people in our lives because we're afraid to let them go. But let me make this clear. We have no say in when a fruit begins to rot. We have no say in when a fruit begins to rot. Sometimes the fruit just starts to rot. It doesn't matter how long you've had it. You could have bought it yesterday or maybe a week ago. Fruit gets moldy, dehydrated. It loses its life, but yet sometimes we still don't throw it away. And we do the same with situations in our lives. We let the fruit rot out of convenience. But what happens when we're hungry and we need something to eat? Do you want a fruit bowl with rotten fruit? That doesn't seem very appetizing. Obviously, we can give the fruit a second chance. We can always try something when we don't know if we'll like the outcome. Take, for example, I hear this all the time. People wanting to say they want to speak their truth. Okay, this is a fruit that is often overlooked and left to rot by most people, I think. And I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm just not confident enough, or no one cares what I have to say. And we tell ourselves that, and we don't eat the fruit. We always buy the fruit with hopes that this time will be different. And you know what? You have no idea how good the fruit will taste until you try it. So I want to ask you this. What fruit have you been telling yourself you're going to try, but haven't? Think about it. Tasting the fruit, experiencing the situation, is sometimes the only way you know, or the only way you will know, if you're going to like it. And say that you've done this now. You've tried the fruit several times, and you don't love the taste, and it doesn't make you happy. For example, competitive friendships or relationships that you've been trying to save. If it all else fails, you can always throw the fruit away. But I know what you're thinking. Isn't that wasteful? What about all the time I've spent? And what about the money? And yada, 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 right? I'm not asking you to think in this metaphor of throwing the fruit away as wasted produce, right? That's not good. I invite you to think of it as composting, giving the fruit another chance to produce more fruit, taking something you don't love and turning it and giving it the chance to be something else that somebody else can love. We all have different flavor profiles, much like we all have our own opinions. By giving ourselves the opportunity to form an opinion on a situation in our life and to actively make the choice to remove it is our privilege. Others can formulate their own thoughts, but my fruit bowl is mine and yours is yours. So that situation wasn't for you. So what? That doesn't mean it's not for everyone. So in this, release the judgment of the taste of any fruit that you've tried that you did not love. Release the judgment. You can comment all you want about the fruit that I have, but I'm the one eating them. And if I believe they taste good to me. And developing this metaphor, this philosophy, has really helped me understand my reactions in a natural way, right? it allows this kind of like radical feeling of like, okay, do I enjoy it? Do I not enjoy it? Do I want it? Do I not want it? And it very, I feel like it instinctively gives you the answer, because it's like, if that was a rotting piece of fruit, would I want to eat that still? Ooh, no? Okay, so I know to get rid of it. Um and it kind of relies on that. And I kind of love that because it simplifies it. As somebody who tends to overcomplicate things, this metaphor helps me understand things simply and simpler. Is that a word? I don't know. But that was lesson number 2 that I learned. Lesson number 3 is the process of grace. This year, more than others, I was told how graceful I handled situations, and to be honest with you, it confused me at first. I didn't think I was handling things with more grace than the average person. I was just kind of handling situations in my life the way that I knew how to, and the way that I would, and the way that I did. And I remember one night when I was journaling about this exact subject, I was like, how could it be seen that I'm handling this particular situation that I was in with grace? I was simply just waiting, communicating, and healing with everything that I had to say and everything that I felt about the situation. And that's when I realized I have this process to being graceful. I don't think grace is just one common thing that you do. I think it's a process. So we begin this process with understanding what grace is. Grace's second sorry. A little Diet Coke break. Grace's second definition, according to Oxford Languages, is courteous goodwill. But I think it goes further than that. Honestly, you can blame my Mormon upbringing, but grace has always meant something much, much more deeper to me. In a world in which my generation, I'm Gen Z, hey, Gen Z, um, in a world in which my generation is growing more and more Puritan and conservative in our behaviors and the way that we go about the world, there is a high stakes moral dilemma that makes everything a deal breaker. Not only is this a problem, I think, because it makes it harder for someone to prove that they can change as a person, but it also makes us as a generation, I'm speaking as a whole, stagnant and apathetic towards change. Grace is not just personally how I want all of my issues I cause in relation to other people to be dealt with, but I feel like it's also a lacking resource we aren't using enough as a generation. Um, for me, I believe that grace is the only way to form deeper, meaningful connections with someone. And why is it that we feel so alone all the time? And I think it's because we're not raised to handle things with grace. We cut people off too quickly. We see little signs of disrespect as a relationship ending offense. And we see avoidance as a death sentence. And you know what? Sometimes that is the case. I want to make that very clear. Sometimes that is the case. I don't not think those are valid reasons to cut somebody off or to stop talking to someone. I understand. I understand this. But turning everything you believe into an inconvenience, into growing resentment, that's not benefiting anyone. That's not benefiting anyone. So if you're anything like me and you're wondering how you can add more grace into your life, hey, I'm talking to you. Or if you're wanting to feel more at peace and not so bothered, then you have to begin with yourself. So, the first step, waiting. The next time you find yourself triggered by a particular situation, acknowledge that emotion. Begin to regulate yourself the best you can. Take a few deep breaths. I want you to attack these issues with curiosity. Let your mind figure out what is bothering you. Find the root cause of this discomfort. Most of the time, you can discover this by finding out why not feeling this way is important to you. Take, for example, Someone not texting you back. This is a personal example of mine. Instead of the typical response of spiraling towards, oh, they don't like me or there was somebody else, can you try to ask yourself, what am I feeling? And why do I feel this way? Now, you're beginning to identify the root of this issue. And we're not done there. The next part of waiting is to identify what you can do to heal your side of the situation. Many times, I found that I can always do a little something to help me when I'm beginning to freak out, whether that be going for a walk or creating a piece of art. I always found ways to help me regulate, understand, and honor where I was coming from in this situation. Sometimes identifying the issue isn't enough, though, and healing feels like it will require a conversation. If you've waited and digested and confronted your own emotions within a situation and you're still feeling bothered, now you can move on to the next step. The next step being communication. Now that you know you've done the work to try to heal your side of this situation, right? Because a lot of the time we jump right to communication and we don't necessarily address the thing that is actually bothering us in a difficult situation. So, yeah. Allow yourself the opportunity to strengthen your vulnerability by having a conversation. Express your feelings because now you know them and they aren't just something that you just feel, or they are something that you understand and have given meaning to because you've taken the time to understand where you're coming from. Prove to yourself that you can, in fact, speak up and advocate for yourself. That's the important part of communicating in a difficult situation. Remember all the time you spent waiting and working on yourself and trying to heal your side of the thing that is bothering you, discovering why it is that this situation matters to you. Now you can take all of that. All of that. You can take all of it onto the table and have more confidence about what it is that is so bothersome in the first place. And I can't reiterate how much I think the majority of this generation automatically jumps to communication. Conclusion and communication. It's like we all immediately decide in the moment when something is right or if it's wrong. And when your opinions become so automatic, I believe it leaves no room for nuance. But like when your opinion is strengthened by knowledge and understood thoroughly, it holds more veracity and even vulnerability because now you're able to speak from this place of knowing and not this place of flustered emotion and clouded judgment. And the kicker is the right people will honor this vulnerability that you are coming to this conversation with. The third step, healing. The last step of grace is to heal regardless of the outcome. I'm going to say that again. The last step of grace is to heal regardless of the outcome. It is time now to return to your heart and heal. Whether the healing of this situation looks like a celebration and getting closer to someone or mourning the relationship that you guys shared, both are integral. Healing is an action that you take for yourself. Instead of rushing into confrontation and addressing the situation without the knowledge of your own emotions, which is what I said before, jumping to communication, you waited until you understood the situation to the best of your ability. Even after trying to intentionally heal what you could with that knowledge, you communicated how you felt authentically. Not your immediate thoughts and feelings, no. Your honest thoughts and feelings. Both of these things that you did, the waiting and the healing yourself first and communicating how you felt, truly is a win. Those things are both, in fact, wins. You have no control over how someone responds to you when you communicate your needs. You have no control over what the other person does. But you were able to walk away from the situation with a better understanding of where you stand with yourself. Regardless of the outcome, whether you worked it out or set a boundary or decided to end things, your relationship with yourself got stronger, and you've upgraded, and you've handled it with grace. That was lesson number 3. Lesson number 4, the last lesson of 2025 that I learned: living like a poet, being sensual in a numb world. That's the title. The Lost Art of Sensuality from Anna Howard's Wild Geese podcast on YouTube was revolutionary for me. I don't know when it came out. I need to look that up. But it came out and I watched it, and it was it opened and unlocked things for me. At some point during the trivial times of this summer, this is what I wrote: my body decided to return into survival mode. This looked like I said at the very beginning of this video, it looked like my people-pleasing tendencies returning, overtly asking my friends' opinions on my life and every decision that I made, and an overall lack in my usual confidence. And at that point, I knew my brain had taken over, and I knew that every choice I made this summer stemmed from this desperate act of survival. Every choice that I made, boom, 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 I was trying to survive. And I do think that there are moments in life, I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this, there are moments in this life that I do think this survival instinct is warranted. Don't get me wrong. I'm grateful for that short period of time, and that I was able to get out of, or at the very minimum, address situations in my life that were driving me to the point where I felt actually crazy. But, after 5 years of actively fighting against my brain's survival instincts to live a more creative and fulfilling and loving life, led by my heart, I knew the damage of returning back into this all or nothing mindset. And I know that when I'm people pleasing, I'm not necessarily being myself. It's not the most authentic version of me. I mean, I chose to stop living at that like that when I was 16, and now at 21, I was suddenly finding myself in those same mindsets of, what are they going to think? What am I going to do? Is this going to make other people happy? All of that came back. And of course that made it so I didn't feel like myself for so long. But after watching the video that I mentioned, The Lost Art of Sensuality from Anna Howard's Wild Geese podcast on YouTube, after watching that video, I made a promise to myself to be more sensual. I mean, just to feel pleasure in this life is such a gift. I don't think being sensitive or sensual is not inherently a bad thing to be. You know, there's a lot of connotations with the word sensual and how it can be seen as kind of dirty. You know, I think I have these connotations for the word because of the way that I was brought up in Mormon purity culture, and sensualism isn't necessarily something that is taught. It's more so learned. But the idea of feeling pleasure, because sensuality is the act of feeling pleasure, right? It doesn't mean inherently sexual. It's all forms of pleasure. That's what sensuality means. The idea of feeling pleasure was one that I welcomed during this time of my life. I didn't like the fact that every day when I was living in my brain, it felt like the same day. And in this video, Howard made a point to acknowledge the bridge between sexuality and poetry. As someone who frequently writes poetry, I loved this perspective. Even my writing this year felt like it took a hit from being in survival mode. Whenever I tried to write a poem this summer, it kind of felt like I was creatively constipated. I just could not, I knew what I wanted to say, but I could not get it out because I just could not put my heart into it, right? I was thinking too hard about the situation itself that I couldn't even look at it from my heart's perspective to put it into words. And that, in combination with taking a creative writing class this past semester, hand in hand, I think those two things taught me how powerful it is to be sensual in a world that is numb. It taught me the power of noticing the mechanisms of truth in my body. It taught me the ability to articulate how I feel without judgment through words. All of this aided me in overcoming everything I went through this year. And I want to say that I want to put a pin in my script to say that I genuinely do not think that I would be able to comprehend all of last year if it weren't for the fact that I was journaling and writing things and writing about my feelings in the moment as they were happening, because I had some I had some crazy events go on that I think would send anybody into psychosis or something crazy like that. Something crazy. But for me personally, like, the act of being like, wow, something crazy just happened. Dear God, like, like the act of actually writing it down in the moment. And like I said, without judgment, through my own words, was incredible, and an incredible tool and habit that I built. So this year, putting the pleasure back into my writing was needed for my development. It was needed. Understanding that when I write a piece of poetry or an essay or a script or whatever I'm writing, it's not me being sensitive. No. It's me trying to grapple with real world feelings that I am going through. Taking the time to slow down, to understand how I felt in the moment, to honor where I was, and to not let myself return back into my brain, right? And to not let myself return back into my brain, and to return back to leading by my heart. It was liberating. And that's not even it's not even to say that this year was the worst year of my life. No. I've had far worse years. But I think there's something to say about how I handled it. And that is because of the journaling that I brought on. Because, honest to God, if I didn't get into journaling, I don't even want to think about it, because it's just so comforting to have a space for myself to express my emotions and to comprehend my life events that is solely for me. That's next to none. Like, next to none, bro. Like, I just, obviously this is a very different thing because I'm reading this essay to you, but like, it just, having a personal diary, a personal journal just for me, where I don't have to read anything from it ever again, is so nice and so comforting. And it's this radical act of sensualism in my life that has gotten me way excited for this year. It's revitalized my creative life force and honestly saved me from spiraling, because I think I could have had a worse year. I could have made 2025 the worst year of my life. I could have, but I decided no. Because I was attractively diligent. I was attractive diligence. I was using attractive diligence to attract what I wanted. And honestly, this is also the reason why, for the first time, I think in my life ever, I really took the time to reflect upon the year that I had, because of how I handled it. I was so intrigued by that process. And so taking the time to do that was honestly really, really eye-opening. And it instilled this gratitude for everything that I went through. Every rotten fruit in my fruit bowl and every ounce of grace that I used during those moments of survival, all of this was cultivating this new energy and this new attitude that I have towards life, and that I'm planning to bring into 2026. And so with that, that's my 2025 year in review, lessons that I've learned, whatever. I don't even know what this is. This is mainly for me. This is mainly for me to look back on, and I really want to get into posting content this year, and sharing my creative endeavors and sharing my learnings somewhere, anywhere, honestly, really. So if you end up watching this, like, thank you so much for listening. And if not, like, hey, we'll catch you in the next one. If this is a long video, but I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, this will not be the last video that I make this year. This is the first of many, and I'm so excited. But anyways, Thank you so much. Have a good day or night, whatever. Peace.